everyone, I am Shadashurao and welcome to Sada Learning Hub. Today's session we are going to learn web application security. If you see here, if any application we need a security to restrict the unused actions, unauthorized actions. If you see, if you want to provide a service of a servlet or a JSP page to only some authenticated users, then we need to apply a security for that a servlet or a JSP. For example, if you take a Gmail, definitely whenever we are login, definitely it is going to authentication and authorization is going to done. If you are going to LinkedIn or if you are going to Facebook, definitely it is going to authenticate. Like that only, we need to whenever we are creating our web application into the Java, definitely we also need to create a security for that. For that security, if you want to provide the service of a servlet or a JSP page the to only some authenticated users, means for example if you are logging to the Facebook, definitely if you are entered any wrong credentials, it's saying is wrong credentials means you are not a authenticated user. Like that, then we need to apply the security for that a servlet or JSP. Whenever you are hitting login button, it is going to request to some other JSP pages or a servlets. To apply the security for the servlet or a JSP, now in this case, I am discussing about in case of Java servlets and JSP for the web security. To apply the security for a servlet or a JSP, we have a two approaches. If you want to apply the security in a JSP or the servlet, there is a two approaches are available. The first one is by the programmer and the second one is by the container. Means by the programmer means we only need to write the programs for the security. Who is going to a authenticated user, who is a not authenticated user. We only need to write the code into our Java. And the second one is by the container. By the container means the server is going to authenticate if the person is authenticated or not. You are going to configure into the server means a Tomcat server. For example, if you take the Tomcat server, a Tomcat server contains a servlet container. If you are going to configure into the server side, the container is going to check that particular person, that particular credentials is a authenticated, is a valid credentials or not, is authenticated credentials or not. These are the two ways we are going to implement a security, web security into a servlets or a JSP pages. If a programmer is manually implemented the security code in a servlets or a JSP, then it is a programmatic security. Means if you are writing a Java code, if you are writing a security in a Java code, that is comes under the programmatic security. A programmer can implement the security logic either in a servlet or a JSP or directly or using a filter. It may be a using a the security code may be a servlet or maybe a Java code or it may be a JSP or it may be a using a filters. Programmatic security increases the burden on the servlet programmer, so declarative security is applied. If you see, if you see, if you are implementing the programmatic security, if you are implementing the programmatic security means the servlet programmer need to write the code into a servlet programming. It is a burden on the programmer, servlet programmer. That's why if you want to reduce the burden on the programmer, just we need to go with the declarative security. What about the declarative security? The declarative security means the container. Declarative security means a container will apply the security. Sorry, here I am putting the wrong point. The declarative security is nothing but the by the container itself. The declarative security means the container will apply the security. I will change it. If you see, the declarative security means a container will apply the security by without manually writing the security logic by the programmer. If you see, if the programmatic security, the programmer need to write the security in a servlets or a JSP or by using the filters. But coming comes into the declarative security means a container will apply the security by without manually writing the security logic by the programmer. Here, no need to write the programmer, no need to write the logic by the programmer. Everything is doing by the server container itself. We need to just configure the uh, uh, roles and responsibilities and in the container, just it will be authenticated by the container itself. Inform in the web container about what servlet or what JSP of the application needs the security. We configure the security related tags in the web.xml file. If you are creating a security related tags in the web.xml file, just it is going to declarative security. Now I will show you what tags we need to write it. If you are going with the declarative security, we need to write into your web.xml file security constraint. In the security constraint, web resource collection. Under the web resource collection, we need to mention web resource name. We need to give at a web resource name whatever the resource you want. At here, we need to give the web resource name at here, something ABC. After that, we need to mention URL pattern. What URL pattern we need to use. After that, we need to mention HTTP method. Is it going to do get or do post? Get method or post method? After that, we need to mention authentication constraint at here. After that, in this authentication constraint, for whom, which role you want to give, we need to mention the role at here. Now, we need to mention log config. In this login config, we need to put which type authentication method. If you see here, there is a four different types of authentication methods are available. There is a four different types of authentication methods. There is a basic authentication and form based authentication and client certificate authentication. Which authentication you are using? We need to mention it here authentication. And next, which realm means we can use, you are using a database or if you are using a server related realms, we need to give the realm name here. Now, if you are putting this one into your web.xml file, definitely we need to mention these tags into web.xml file for the declarative security. This is enough for the declarative security to maintain security into your web applications by web applications. See here, to providing the security for the resources is nothing but applying the authentication and authorization service. Means providing a security means authentication and authorization. If you see here, authentication means what and authorization means what. Here two terms are comes into the picture. There is a authentication and the authorization. If your authentication means is nothing but verifying your username and password, and authorization is nothing but verifying your role. Means, for example, if you see the role means, for example, if you are a admin role, if you are admin role, we can do it anything. If you seeing in a banking domain, if you banking domain, manager can do some roles, and the under the manager, cashier can do some roles, and the PO do some roles. All roles are not done by the PO, and all roles are done by the manager, and all roles are done by the clerk. There the different roles are available for those that can be checked by the authorization. Means authentication and authorization. A customer and the manager are the roles in a bank application. A customer has a username and password, and also a manager has a username and password. A set of roles with their usernames and passwords is combinedly called as a realm. See here, what is the realm? A set of roles with their username and password is combinedly called as a realm. That is called a realm. Now, I am explaining once again. If you want to provide any service of a servlet or a JSP page to only some authenticated users, then we need to apply a security for that, a servlet or a JSP. To apply the security for a servlet or a JSP, we have two approaches. The first one is a programmatic approach, and the second one is the by the container. A programmer is manually implemented the security code in a servlet or a JSP, then it is a programmatic security. A programmer can implement the security logic either in a servlet or a JSP directly or by using a filters. Programmatic security is increases the burden on a servlet programmer. So the declarative security is comes into the picture. Declarative security means it is giving by the container. Declarative security means a container will apply a security by without manually writing a security logic by the programmer. It informs the web container about what servlet or a what JSP application needs the security. We configure the security realm tags in the web.xml file. These are the tags we need to configure into your web.xml file. No need to do any programmatic into your project. Just we can configure it into your web.xml file. what is the security constraint and what are the web resource collections and what's the authentication constraints and which authentication you are using. If you see, there is a four types of authentications are available: basic authentication, digit authentication, and form based authentication, and client certification authentication. Which authentication you are using? We need to mention which authentication you are using in the login config. By providing the security for the resources is nothing but applying the authentication and authorization services. Authentication is nothing but verifying a username and password, and authorization is nothing but verifying your role. If you see a bank, a customer has a some role, a manager has a some role. Manager roles are not displayed for the customer, but customer roles are displayed for manager and the customer. That about the role. A set of roles with their username and passwords, a combinedly called as a realm. Now, I am going to discuss about first declarative security model, that is called basic authentication. If you see the basic authentication, when a client request is made for a secured servlet or a JSP, then a container will apply the basic authentication like the following. If you see, if you see this picture, when you are applying the basic authentication, these are the steps going to execute by the container. First, the container displays a dialog box on the browser to accept the username and the password. I will show you one example how it is going. Immediately it will be show the dialog box. Whenever you are hitting the URL, it will be show the dialog box with the username and the password. If the username and the password are not correct, then again a dialog box will be displayed like this. A totally three chances are given by the client. First time you are given wrong, automatically it will be show the second time. Second time it is going wrong, it will be show the third time. Third time is going wrong, it will be show the 401 error page. If three chances are failed, then the message will be 401 status will be displayed. If the current, then the requested resources is allowed to access. Why? Because you are giving a wrong credentials. It is going to fail to authenticate and authorization. That's what it is going to give you a 401 status. The if you see, basic authentication is implemented in the Tomcat server. Whenever you are try to connect with the manager, if you try to connect with the root, it will be automatically pop up, gives a username and password. If you are giving the three times wrong, automatically it will gives the 401 status message. A Tomcat Manager application is an example of the basic authentication model. The simple Tomcat Manager. Now, if you see the step 2 and 3, request username and the password and send username and the password are repeated for the three times. If the username and the password are correct, then the response of the resources will be returned to the client. These are the four steps is going to execute for the basic authentication. To configure the username and the password under their respective roles, we need to configure in the Tomcat. Now I will show in the how the basic authentication will be going into the Tomcat. Now I will create a sample example. I will show you how it is going to execute and how to configure in the Tomcat and how to configure the roles. I will show you. If you want to configure, we need to configure in the Tomcat users XML. It is available in the config folder. I will show you how to configure and all those things. And just I discussed it in discussed it just now. We need to configure in the web.xml file. We need to configure this one in the web.xml file. I will show you a simple example with how the basic authentication is going to work. I will show it now. See here, I'm created a simple example for the basic authentication. Now all these projects are available into my public GitHub repository. If you want this project, just go through the description link and get the link, GitHub URL, get the GitHub URL and go do it the practice. Otherwise, it is the waste to do the practice. Otherwise, it is waste to do learning. See here. Now I'm creating a one simple servlet. This is my simple servlet. I'm created a do get method. In this do get method, simply I am creating a print writer object. After that, I am creating a response text.xml and I am creating page successfully displayed the request dot get remove the user and something authentication. What authentication type? Why? Because whatever information is available that will be stored into the request. Whatever the request, it will be stored into the request object, and whatever the response, it will be shown into the response object, and all those things I am put it into the here. Now if you coming to the web.xml, in the web.xml, see here, this is my servlet. I'm configured my servlet at here. This is my servlet. After that, I'm configured in security constraint. In this security constraints, I'm creating a web resource collection. This is my web resource collection. In this my web resource collection name, I am giving the basic security test, and the URL pattern I am giving is basic authentication servlet. And the HTTP method, this is going to support the get method. And if you see authentication constraint, I am giving the role to access the servlet as a student role. If the role is student, then only that person is only access this basic servlet. Now here I'm saying that if you see here, I'm saying that logging config. What I am using basic authentication. I'm configured in my relay into my Tomcat folder. If you see servers, this is the servers. Already my Tomcat folder is installed, is embedded installed into my Eclipse only. If you want how to do, just go through my Eclipse videos, Eclipse playlist. In that playlist, one video is available. Just go through how to install a Tomcat into your Eclipse. That will be show it clearly. If you see, this is my project side related configurations. See here, I'm creating a simple servlet. At here, in the simple servlet, I'm creating a one do get method. Creating a simple web.xml. In this web.xml, I'm configured my servlet and servlet mapping tags. After that, I'm using the basic authentication. For that, I mentioned I'm using the basic authentication. After that, I'm using the security constraint. These are the security constraint. Whatever this is the resource name. After that, which servlet we are going to give the security. I'm giving the security for basic servlet. That is a get method. I'm accessing. I'm giving access to a student role. Now, coming to the Tomcat server configurations, we need to configure into your Tomcat server for these configurations. Just open the Tomcat users.xml. See here, this is the servers tab. If you see, this is the servers. In these servers, there is a Tomcat 7.0 folder is available. In this Tomcat 7.0 folder, just open the Tomcat users.xml. In this Tomcat users.xml, I'm adding a one new line that is called user is equal to username, user space username is equal to Sada, and password Sada. I'm giving the role is student. See here, I'm giving a role called student. I'm giving the username Sada and the password is Sada. Whenever you are hitting, we need to give Sada and Sada. Definitely, it will be checked into this Tomcat XML file. Is there any student role with Sada and Sada, username and password Sada and Sada? If it is available, then only it is going to success. Otherwise, it is going to fail. Now, I will run and show how it is going to work. This is the only one configurations available in the server side. Just go to the Tomcat users.xml and do this change and do add. This is the one line. After that, run your application into your Tomcat. Just I'm right clicking on my project, run as run on server. I'm clicking on the next. Just I'm removing this one. I don't want. I'm clicking on finish. If you see here, my Tomcat is going to start. Now, what I am doing is, see here, what I am doing is I'm giving a what I am doing is I'm giving a security for which one? I'm giving a security for basic authentication servlet. I'm giving a security for basic authentication servlet. Now I can hit this servlet. I can hit the servlet once. See here, I am hitting this servlet. Now I'm clicking on enter. See here, whenever you are pressing enter, it will give you a pop-up. Authentication is required. It is asking the authentication is required. Now I'm giving the Sada. See, before that I'm applying how the basic authentication is executing. The first container displays the dialog box on the browser to accept the username and the password. Right? Now I'm creating a simple application into my application, simple application, web application. In this simple application, I'm giving a security for my basic authentication servlet. Only I'm giving a security in basic authentication servlet. If you see, this is the web.xml file. In this web.xml file, I mentioned I'm giving a security for basic authentication servlet, which is role is the student. Whenever get method, this is the URL pattern. I am giving a security for this only. I'm using the basic authentication only. If you see Tomcat user in the server side configuration, I am using the I am configured. This is the roles. Student is the role. I'm using the giving the whatever the username and password. Just give username and password. Now the first step is the Tomcat. First, the container displays the dialog box on the browser to access the username and the password. Now I'm giving the username and the password. I'm giving the wrong at here. Now I'm creating the clicking on the login button. Whenever you are clicking on the login button, now I'm giving the wrong credentials. Why? Because if you see whatever I'm giving the credentials is Sada and Sada, but here I'm not giving the Sada and Sada. If I'm giving something, the first authentication is failed. It is asking the second authentication. If you see second authentication also failed, I'm giving wrong. If it is asking the third time authentication, if it is third time is also failed, it is giving the 401 error. Means it will be display the 401 message, status message. If you see, I'm giving the third time is also wrong. It giving the 401 message. Now it is giving the 401 message. Now once again I am trying. See here, I am giving the right credentials. Now this time it is going to give properly. Why? Because in the Tomcat users.xml I am giving the username is Sada and password is Sada and role is also student. That's why it is giving the response. Page successfully displayed. The username is Sada and the authentication is basic authentication. If you see here, I am printing is page successfully displayed. The username is request.get remote user. The authentication type is request.get auth type. See here, this is the about basic authentication. Here only we need to know only 3 points. First, we need to first we need to configure. We need to decide which servlets or which JSPs you want to give a authentication and authorization security. Which servlets or JSP you want to give the security. After that, after that decided, we need to configure into your web.xml file in the security constraint. Just we can configure at here whatever the JSP. If you want to JSP, just configure JSPs at here. If you are servlet, just configure servlet at here. Multiple web resource collections. And we need to which authentication type we need. We need to give authentication type. Which logging config, which authentication method you are using. We need to give at here which authentication method. After that, this is about your projected configurations. Just come to the uh, server side. Just we need to configure only one. We need to modify only one file that is called Tomcat users.xml file. We need to configure role and username and password for that particular role. If you see here, I'm creating a Sada username, password is Sada, and I'm creating the role is student. After that, just run it into a Tomcat and enjoy your code. See here, all these projects are available into my GitHub repository. If you want this project, just go through the description and get the link from my description of this video and do the practice. This is about web security basic authentication. The next video I'm going to discuss about digest authentication. Is it digest authentication supports the Java? If it is supports, how to implement the digest authentication?
Thank you so much watching this video. Hope this lesson helpful to you. Keep watching our lessons. Keep writing to us. Do not forget subscribe our channel Sada Learning Hub because we have many sessions that would help you to develop our skills and I will be back soon. Till then you take care. Bye bye.